Hey there, and welcome. So today, we're talking about Lent. And yeah, I know, it's a season a lot of us are familiar with, but trust me, there's this incredibly powerful spiritual journey hiding just beneath the surface that most of us completely miss.
So is Lent just about giving up chocolate for 40 days? I mean, really, is that all it is? Just this big test of willpower to see if you can stay off Instagram or avoid that candy bar? Well, the short answer is absolutely not. It's so much deeper than that.
So, if it's not a diet, what is it? The best way to frame it, really, is to think of it as a journey. Not a diet for your body, but a pilgrimage for your soul. And like any good pilgrimage, it has a very specific, very important destination.
And that number, 40 days, you might be wondering, where does that come from? It is definitely not random. It's designed to echo the 40 days Jesus spent fasting out in the desert. You know, that was his time of temptation and intense preparation before he began his public ministry. So for Christians, it's this chance to do the same thing, to get focused and spiritually ready.
Okay, so if we're on a journey, we have to know where we're going, right? What's the goal? Well, it all comes down to this one really powerful Greek word that kind of unlocks the whole meaning of the season, and that word is metanoia.
Now, metanoia, this isn't just about, changing a bad habit. It is way bigger. It's about a complete reorientation of your entire life. Think of it like a profound spiritual U-turn, a conscious choice to turn back toward God and away from all the stuff that pulls you in the wrong direction.
So why go through all that? What's the point? The whole idea is to clear away the clutter, the noise in our lives. By intentionally stripping away those distractions, you're basically preparing your heart and your mind to experience the joy of Easter, the resurrection, on a much deeper, more profound level.
Okay, that sounds great, but how do you actually do it? How do you achieve this metanoia? Well, it's not some abstract idea. There's actually an ancient, very practical toolkit that's been used for centuries, and it's built on 3 core pillars.
And those pillars are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Now, you've probably heard of all of these on their own, but the real magic, the real power, comes from how they work together. They're an interconnected system.
And what's so brilliant about this is that it's not just a random checklist of things to do. It's a holistic approach. Each pillar is specifically designed to address and to heal a key relationship in our lives. You've got our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with our neighbors. All right, so let's break that down. Let's look at how each of these pillars helps to rebalance, you could even call it restore justice to, these 3 really important relationships.
First up is prayer. And this, of course, is all about justice toward God, getting that relationship right. And during Lent, we're not just talking about saying your usual prayers. The goal is to go deeper, to move it from a routine into a real intentional conversation. The kind of talk that actually keeps you on the right path. This type of prayer is really about acknowledging our total dependence on God. It's about admitting we don't have all the answers. By actually carving out time for some silence or to read scripture, you're trying to tune your ears, so to speak, to hear God's will instead of just the constant noise of what we want. Okay, so that's prayer. Next up is the second pillar, fasting. This is probably the one Lent is most famous for, right? And it all comes from that powerful line from Jesus in the desert, "One does not live by bread alone." A good way to think about fasting is like a spiritual detox. That physical feeling of hunger or just missing something you usually enjoy, it acts as a constant physical reminder. The whole point is to humble the body a bit, to remind us that our ultimate, deepest hunger isn't for food or Netflix or whatever, but for Christ. And this is where you can really see how these pillars work together. If fasting is the internal work that humbles our ego, then the third pillar, almsgiving, is the external work. It's what expands the heart.
This is so crucial. Almsgiving, and that can be giving your money, your time, your talents. It's what stops this whole Lenten journey from becoming some self-centered, navel-gazing exercise in willpower. It forces you to turn your focus outward, to look at the needs of others, and to really foster that spirit of charity.
Okay, so you've got prayer, fasting, and almsgiving all working in harmony. But how does this whole toolkit actually get you ready for Easter? How does it connect to the celebration of the resurrection?
I love this metaphor. Think of these practices as the tools you use to clear out the weeds from the garden of your soul, right? The tools themselves aren't the point. They're just the way you create a clear space so that something new and beautiful can actually grow. And look at how perfectly each practice connects to the Easter story.
Fasting lets you unite your own little sufferings with Christ's huge sacrifice. Prayer lets you mirror his constant communion with the Father. And almsgiving? That lets you mirror his selfless, total gift of himself to humanity. It all ties together.
When you get right down to it, this whole thing is about turning down the world's noise. The entire goal is to quiet all those distractions so you can enter more deeply into what's called the Paschal mystery. You know, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And the hope is that in that quiet, you can hear the voice of Christ just a little bit more clearly.
So yeah, Lent is so much more than giving up chocolate. It's a structured, intentional journey of turning back to God. Which kind of leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about, right? In this crazy, noisy world we live in, what are the weeds that we need to clear from our own garden?